Welcome to Be the Good with Kate, the show where guests leave you inspired to uncover your passions and discover tangible ways to make a difference along the way. I'm your host, Kate Chericello-Tente, and here I talk to individuals who are doing just that. Individuals from all walks of life and industries following their passions and making the world a better place while they do. With guests hailing from Bali to Utah, Florida to Japan, and just about everywhere in between, something I love about human connection and inspiration is how you certainly don't need to be from the same place or a similar background to get so much out of hearing from a person. In fact, I think it is better that way. We notice how we as humans are so similar in so many ways, and how each of us has so much power to make a difference in our own lives and the lives of others. I hope you're inspired here to start, restart, or continue your journey of finding your passions and helping others along the way. I love a text saying, "This made me think of you today." If there is someone in your life who could use today's story, click share and send their way. And thank you for helping to inspire more people. Now on to this week's episode. Let's spread a little more goodness in the world. So welcome back to Be the Good with Kate. Today we have Chaplain John Wenderlein here, and he is in Florida, outside of Orlando, with his wife of many years, Melinda. He has one child and 4 grandchildren. While in seminary, he sensed a calling and became a hospice chaplain. He has a master's in biblical studies, and he believes if he can make this last season of a person's life just a little bit better, he has truly been blessed. He's written 2 books, Remember Me, End of Life Stories, as seen through the eyes of a hospice chaplain, and Delayed Honor, and will be working on his 3rd starting in 2025. John, thanks so much for talking to me today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on, Kate. It's always a blessing to get the opportunity to come on and talk about something I'm pretty passionate about.
Well, thank you. And I really am so glad we connected. I think that what you do, a lot of people, I know I do, think of it as, oh my gosh, how can you show up and have to face the idea of death day in and day out? So can you maybe paint that picture a little bit more for us, especially, someone who's not in that world every day?
Well, first of all, to be in the profession that I'm in, whether you be the nurse or the social worker or even the chaplain, you have to get up in the morning being an optimist, not a pessimist.
Mm.
We have to see, we just have to see opportunity in everything we do. I can't imagine not being with somebody as close to the end of their life as possible. Just that I believe it with all my heart that, everybody needs to have somebody tell them it's just going to be okay. Somehow it's just going to be okay. We're all going to face it. So I think in some ways it's my way of getting ready for me to face it with what I do for a living. So that's it. For me it's very rewarding. But you're absolutely correct. And when people find out that I'm a hospice chaplain, they go, "Oh, I don't see how you could do that. That's so horrible. How could you do it?" But I just can't imagine not. So, Kate, I love what I do.
And there it is. And how many years now have you been in the hospice world of being a chaplain?
Just about 9 years.
Okay.
Just about 9 years. I actually tried to join the military in seminary in the late 90s, but I was a little too old. The president had got us into Desert Storm, and they were calling up some of our ministry younger men who were in the National Guard. So I read an article that said for every 1,100, 1,200 soldiers, there was one chaplain. And, it just played on me. It just consumed me. So I told my father, who was Navy, I said, "Dad, I'm going to go join the Navy." And of course, I was turning 40 years old at that time. And it didn't happen. I tried all the branches.
That's really interesting. That's not something that, I've performed with the USO for quite a few years, and that is not something that we hear about often, is people who choose to join the military specifically as a chaplain.
Oh yes, it's definitely a calling. The Army has a specific school I think you spend a year and a half there being trained to be a chaplain. So, what I've found in all the years I've been doing this is that at the end of life, somebody needs somebody spiritual. What happens when a person comes on hospice, Kate, is we want to get their medicines right. We want to get their pain under control. It's called palliable care. So when a person's pain is under control, they have an opportunity to focus on the next step, and the next step is a spiritual sense. So, I feel like we don't do a person a justice if we don't get both those things under control before they draw their last breath.
You reminded me a couple seasons ago, we had someone on who was a hospital clown in Belgium, of all the specific kind of job careers. And he talked about palliative care for children and being a hospital clown and being there. So, from a different angle, of course, than the spiritual aspect, he was more of just the finding that warmth and lightness for a child. But did you come in working just with adults or just with people of certain ages, or do you see them all?
Well, I do not see people. I think the youngest I've had was 18.
Mm,
Now, I also work on call as a hospice chaplain at the hospital.
yeah.
And I worked 2 years through COVID,
Mm,
while COVID was at its highest over the weekends. And I've definitely been there when young children have passed, when children have died in birth.
yeah.
So I've seen all those things, not necessarily related to
Mm,
hospice. Like I said, I think the youngest person I've been with is 18, going
mm,
to be 19, and he had just had a rare cancer.
my gosh. How do you handle that first step into a patient's room? Not knowing what you're about to face. These are strangers to you, I'm assuming. So, how do you know where to start?
Well, Kate, the what I do or have to do is requires a lot of dynamics.
Mm,
Every with every family, there's dynamics, as you know. There's history. So my thoughts are to try to get into that patient's family as easily and as comfortably as possible. I try to make them feel more at ease. Um, but yeah, dealing with not just a patient, but dealing with all the caregivers, all the people who love them. So it's pretty involved. I like to say I've got a really good record, but every once in a while, people just decide they don't want a chaplain. Um,
mm,
and it could be because they get the wrong impression of what a chaplain is.
mm.
Many times they think it's a person who just brings the Bible in and thumps them over the head with it, when really that's not what we do.
So then tell us more, because I would love to hear, if someone listening maybe isn't someone who would relate as a spiritual person or a religious person, how do you frame what you do to them?
Well, the first thing I do is I get to know the person.
Yeah.
If they want to talk about an old Corvette, or they want to talk about a vacation to, Niagara Falls or whatever that is, I want them just to understand I'm just a normal guy. But beyond that, I want them to know that I'm sincerely in that room uh, for a need that they have. It's funny when I finally got the calling to be a chaplain, and the company that I was working for at the time said, we'd like to hire you full time. I already had a full time job. And fact is, my full time job was paying me a lot better than what I get paid now. But my passion was to come alongside people, and you know, I've had the blessed opportunity to be with people who've drawn their last breath. I've had the blessed opportunity to take people who have gotten bad news from a doctor. It usually means that you have 6 months, uh, and just as best I can make it okay.
Wow. Just it really is mind blowing to me to hear that this is a part of your day. And it sounds like such a miraculous skill and just person to be able to do this. And you talk about it like it's what you love to do. You love to be there. And I think that's amazing. Hey, John, take me back to like John at age 10. Did you say someday I want to work in this field? Like how did this come about? Like what would you have said then?
No, at 10 years old, I can't imagine what I wanted to do at 10. It certainly wasn't this. I know I'm raised by a mother who's very sensitive, very compassionate, a father that it was not. He's passed. He was pretty much a tough guy. So I got enough of my mother to find passion in everything that I do. Um, so I tell people the Lord came into my life in my early 30s, and I've never been the same. And in the same instance, probably not too long after I've got to know who the Lord was in my profession, uh, I found myself when the patient would cry, I would cry along with them, and I
Mm.
would tell them, "Listen, I'm 6'2", 270 pounds. It doesn't do good for me to cry." Mondays are very busy for me. Today has been a very busy day. Looking after what we call our care center.
Mhm.
We have a building, multiple buildings where we take care of it up to 12 people who are at the very end, who the
Mhm.
family just can't take care of. The hospital, just really can't care for them. The advantage to hospice is real simple, in that you have a nurse that watches you 24 hours a day. And when medicines have to be prescribed, because your body is changing, there's a doctor on call at all times. So the
Mhm.
care is just immeasurable.
Wow. Something you just said made me think of this. I'm someone who comes from a faith background, and it's not as, I guess, foreign in my mind to hear of someone choosing to drop an old career and choose to do something that doesn't pay as much because it's a passion and it is something in the faith world. Or have you ever had to explain this to someone who just doesn't have that background, who says, wait, what do you do? Why would you do this? Why would you leave a paycheck?
Yeah, that's the $94 question always. People always wonder, why is it you do what you do? You have to have a passion for it. Yeah, I worked in the building industry for a long time, selling building materials. I've built homes before, and but when this came into my heart and my soul, I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. I genuinely get up every morning enjoying going to work and
Oh,
being
that's
alongside those sweet people who I know may not see tomorrow. So it's a real strange. It's my wife said it's just the way the Lord is getting me prepared for the end of my end, my demise. I don't know. All I know is that I was going to retire here in about a year. Legally retire, and I may be working on until I'm 70 because I just enjoy what I'm doing. So I
that's
don't know,
wonderful.
Kate. I wish I had the answer.
Well, is there something that's most surprising about where your life is today, professionally, personally, or a mix of both?
Oh, well, I've been doing this long enough to where it's settled in and settled down. Um, you know, um, what happens in the medical industry, and many times they won't admit it, but chaplains are a little confusing to those people who are doctors and nurses and professionals. I'll walk through nursing homes or ALFs, and they'll say, "Oh, are you a doctor?" I wear a certain kind of shirt and a badge, and I'll say, "Oh no, I'm not a doctor. Do I look smart?" And they'll laugh, and I'll say, "I'm just the chaplain. I've just come in here to love you up and talk about the weather if you wanted to." So what happens? I walk into a nursing home specifically looking for one patient, and I may have 20 or 30 of them sitting around, and it winds up being just you know, a blessed coming home. We just sit around and talk. And I don't know. I've always had a passion for people coming to the end of their life. I just always have. Without a doubt, I believe with all that's in me that everybody has a story. I've documented hundreds, probably maybe 1,000, 1,500 stories in my life, in my career, that have just touched me. That's not even all that I've ever done, but all I've seen. But there's just wonderful stories out there.
Oh, that's incredible, especially because, every day there's a study coming out about the importance of the social aspect, having people that you can talk to, that you can be with, not being lonely, and you being, sometimes you are, like you said, you just walk in and end up having a chat with a whole bunch of people. That's so huge. And I think it's something that's easy for, us just regular people to forget, that the power of a conversation in any stage of life is so important. So I can only imagine how much tenfold that is important at the end of life there that you're seeing. And do you share a lot of these stories in the books that you've written?
I do. The first book was specifically about my coming to understand what I wanted to do, and then several stories. And then the second book is the delayed honor book. That's really exclusively dealing with Vietnam veterans coming to the end of their life
Mm.
and not ever getting honored when they came off the plane and the boats, spat upon, and now they're coming to the end of their lives. See, we've pretty much buried World War II veterans. They would have to be over 100 to be around. And the Korea conflict, it wasn't a very large group of soldiers that went and fought in that. But Vietnam, about 2.7 million people in America served in some form or fashion in Vietnam. So it was a very large situation. So yes, my both my books do, and my COVID book is going to come out. I call it my COVID book because it's not going to be political. It's not going to be a conspiracy. It's just going to be stories that I drew from my experience the couple years I was at the hospital. In that we lost 3 nurses to COVID who were on staff there. We lost a doctor, but we lost all walks of life. And there's a lot of things that people don't really know that went on in the medical industry that I just think that was surprising to me, even me.
Mm.
Uh,
Very
I'm
good.
going to start on that on maybe the first of the year.
Okay. And John, do you have any advice you'd give someone who maybe is feeling a calling like you felt to follow their heart with something that isn't in maybe the mainstream of a career or something more faith forward? Is there any advice you'd give that person?
Well, we live such a short time on this earth. I know we think 70, 80, 90 years is a long time, but I have never, Kate, had a 95-year-old woman or man tell me, Chaplain, this life is just so slow. It's just dragging. What they tell me is, I don't know what happened. It all went away. I buried everybody and I'm the only one left. And, I would tell anyone who has a passion, just follow it, because it's not what we do now, it's what we leave behind.
Mm.
And I want to leave behind the understanding that I cared. That's it.
And that is the crux of it, right? That's so important. And John, thank you for what you're doing for people. Tell us where, and this will be in the show notes as well for people to click on, but where can they find you online and read more and read your books?
Well, remember me, jw.com is my webpage that a close friend of mine's put together. And it pretty much outlines all the interviews. I've only been doing this for about a year, since January, and I've probably done 25 or 30 podcasts. I've had 4 or 5 articles published. But you can go to that webpage. That will show you my 2 books. Of course, they're on Amazon. Um, you know, um, I'm able to have conversation with them if they post a question on my webpage. And I've had some really good, really heartfelt questions about end of life. So end of life is a clue. It's not how you live life; it's how you end life. So I think we need to end it boldly in some form or fashion. So for me, I want people to know I love my Lord, and then I love my wife, that I love my only daughter and my grandbabies, and then so on and so forth. So there's a pecking order to life, and I just want to make sure I lead that. But
Well, and I love how you stress about, and you had written it to me too, about that being there because everyone has a story.
yeah,
Everyone has a story. And I know that's something I've learned just from interviewing 100 and I
oh
guess
yeah,
30 people at this point. Every person has a story, and it's so interesting. And we're all so different, but yet we have so many similarities. And you're pulling these stories out of people that I'm sure not even, some of them haven't even been told, I'm sure, before.
absolutely. The classic is my Vietnam veterans.
Mm.
There have been stories that have been told in rooms where family members are, and the wife has, who've been married to the soldier for 50, 60 years, has said, I never heard that story before. And now I understand why he's been the way he was the last 50 years. Because, one of the key things to what we do at the end of our life is we start to reflect. We
Mm.
start to look back. I'm not sure when that happens in life. I want to say, it's in our 40s, or we look at our children and from that we start to reflect.
Mm.
But the closer we get to an older age, the more reflection we do. So um, these men and women who served in Vietnam, for an example, have 50 years of, keeping things quiet and within them. And at the end of life, you just don't do that. You download. You have to find some peace within your spirit. So I've heard all kinds of stories.
Yeah. I like how you just said you have to find some peace within your spirit too.
That's exactly right.
Well, John, what you're doing is so beautiful. And thank you also for just, for the listeners, putting that, I guess, either idea if they hadn't heard it before, or just reminder that people like you are out there and are caring at the end of life too, to make sure that stories are told, that people feel heard, and that they have that person with them. So thank you, John. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this helpful, a 5-star review, like, or comment means the world to me. And if you found insight in this episode, chances are someone else will too. Share with a friend to give them a boost today. Until next time, I'm Kate Chiaratello-Tente, and this was Be the Good with Kate.